Sorry about that. Yeah, forgot to actually get the mic set up before we started the recording. So, today, guys, we're back for another episode of the podcast. We're going to be talking about conditioning today. So, before we get into it, as we get started, a reminder for everyone that is tuning in, the goal of this show is to help athletes build their dream careers in sports. So, we talk about training stuff, we talk about mindset work. Today, we are digging into conditioning. More specifically, we are digging into a question I got about conditioning, which was, should we do short sprints or long runs to condition for fighting? But let's get into the show. Why don't we? So, three, two, one, and let's do this. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about conditioning. We are talking about what you need to do in order to best condition yourself for fighting. And more specifically, we are talking about a question that I got in relation to this exact topic, which is, in order to condition for fights, should I do long runs or short sprints? Now, we're going to break down the answer to the question, but we're also going to break down why this is just the wrong way of thinking. And I had this conversation with the individual that asked me, but I wanted to bring it to you all as well. When you think about conditioning in that way, like, should I do this or do this? What you're basically putting into your mind is you're putting in that there's an answer, there's a quick fix. There's just that one thing that I need to do. And if I do that, then it'll all be sorted. And that's just not how it works. So first off, when it comes to, short sprints or long runs, my first thing that I want to really make sure I reinforce with you guys, running itself is not essential. And I know a lot of fighters and a lot of coaches and a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but running itself is not essential. And the reason it is not essential is because if you go for, as an example, a long run, like a 30, 40-minute run, the benefit that you are providing to your career as a fighter is not your ability to run for 40 minutes. It is the aerobic benefit that you take back into the fight. It is what is happening to your cardiovascular system that then helps you fight at a higher level. But there's a lot of different ways that you can build that cardiovascular system. So I'm not saying never go for another run. I'm not saying running is the worst thing that you could ever do. Just understand running is not an essential thing you need to do in order to build your conditioning for combat sports, whether that be long runs or whether that be short sprints. Neither are essential. They are a tool you can use. That's it. But when it comes down to long runs or short sprints, just overall, let's not think necessarily running, but let's think more in terms of long runs being aerobic work, so longer duration, lower intensity, and short sprints being anaerobic work, shorter duration, maximum intensity. Which one is more effective? Which one should you be doing? Basically, there's a few different things that I want to break down with this. Number one is that, again, it is a mix of both that is going to actually allow you to build the best possible gas tank for combat sports. So I know that's a frustrating answer. I'm not coming on here and just telling you, here's the magic, go do it, because there is no magic. There's no one answer. There's a lot of different elements that go into it. So do not think that it's going to be one or the other. But when it comes to conditioning for the sport, what I want you guys really thinking about is I want you guys thinking about optimizing your time. See, when you go to, as an example, a wrestling practice, there is a lot of aerobic work happening in that wrestling practice. If you're rolling for minutes at a time, it's a 2-hour-long practice and you're doing all these repeated efforts through 2 hours. That is a longer duration of time. And as much as I know, obviously, you're working hard, you are not at maximal intensity because you're going for 2 hours. It's literally impossible to be at maximum intensity for that long. So you're getting a lot of aerobic benefit within the training that you're doing already. So when it comes to optimizing your time, what I need you to think about is I need you to think about what you can do that's going to make the best use of the remaining time that you have. Because you're doing a lot of fight training already. Like I mentioned, wrestling practices, you got jiu-jitsu, you got striking stuff, whatever else it is you're doing a lot of fight training already. And so if all the time that you spend outside of the fight training, which will be primarily aerobic, there is anaerobic work in there as well, but it will be primarily aerobic. If you're doing all of this aerobic work during your week, and then you go to do your conditioning work and you just do more aerobic work, you're only going to make so much aerobic benefit within the time that you're training. So what I want you to think about is, should I be spending that time doing more aerobic work, or should I be spending that time doing more anaerobic work, the shorter sprint style? Right? A lot of the time, it's going to be more anaerobic work, more shorter duration, maximal intensity, because you're already getting a lot of aerobic benefit from the fight training that you're doing. Now, again, I want to reinforce this because a lot of people like to hear one little thing that someone says and just take it and run. This is not me saying that aerobic work outside of the sport itself is not required. I have a lot of my athletes do aerobic work during their off seasons, but when it comes to fight camp, primarily we want to focus on the anaerobic work. And the reason that the primary focus is anaerobic work, not all the focus, the primary focus, is because that is what we're getting less of within the fight training itself. However, I want to segue into another very important point, which is when I say anaerobic work, I don't just mean conditioning. I don't just mean sprints. Now, what I want you guys understanding as well is that when it comes to conditioning, when it comes to having a good gas tank, people always think about the cardio. They think about the sprints, they think about the runs, they think about the long bike rides, all of this stuff. What they're not thinking about is they're not thinking about the base which you're building that cardio off of. I talk to athletes every day that want to drastically improve their cardio, and they do no strength training whatsoever. And I know what some of you are thinking right away is, well, doesn't lifting weights make you slow? Like, why would I lift weights when I need to do more sparring and I need to do more skills training? And this is what I want you thinking about. I understand the mentality that, skills training should precede lifting weights. If you have the choice between doing the two, you should do the skills training. I understand the mentality, and to a degree, you are correct. But where a lot of people go wrong is they neglect the weight training entirely. They don't do any of it because I need to do more skills training. I need to do more skills training. I need to do more skills training. And if that sounds like you, what I want you to understand is I want you to understand that if you are neglecting strength training entirely, essentially what you're doing is you're not allowing yourself to execute the skills that you have at the highest possible level. Now, let me explain what I mean when I say that. You are not going to be able to execute your skills at the highest possible level if you are not strength training, because the stronger you are, the more power you can output. The stronger you are, the less amount of effort is required for every movement you make while you fight. Every step, every shot you throw, every takedown you go for, every reversal you go for when you're on your back. The stronger you are, the less energy that will take. Now, what I want to reiterate with that is you shouldn't be doing bodybuilding programs designed to get you massive. Your goal with strength training is to get the frame that you have as strong as it can be. So what I always tell my athletes is we're not in the weight room to set huge personal bests. Like, yeah, when personal bests come, of course, we're going to be happy about it. But my goal with any MMA fighter that I have is not for them to, hit a certain number on a squat, hit a certain number on a bench, but they are all going to be weight training 2 to 3 times per week, at least. And the reason that needs to happen is because you're building up a stronger base. You're building up a stronger base, and the stronger the base is, the better athlete we can build off of that base. So if you are 20% stronger, then that means every time you throw a shot, you have the ability to output 20% more power. So if you mix that strength base with a good mix of aerobic and anaerobic conditioning, that is going to be what allows you to be the fastest, the strongest, the most explosive, and the best conditioned on the night of the fight when it actually matters. So what I really want you guys to take away from this, I know it's a pretty quick run through, but when it comes to building conditioning, there's no one answer. Stop thinking, I just need to run, or I just need to sprint, or I just need to do this. You've got to balance everything. When it comes to balancing everything, we're not just talking about sprints or runs, we're talking about strength training, we're talking about plyometric training, we're talking about speed training. Then we're talking about the aerobic work and the anaerobic training. Now, when it comes to balancing all of those things, the thing you need to think about the most when you're setting up this program is, how do I optimize the time that I have? So look at the rest of your week. And if the rest of your week you're doing primarily aerobic work, longer duration, lower intensity, like you get at a lot of skill practices, then in the rest of your week, think about what's going to be the best benefit to you. Improving your ability to repeat maximum power efforts for a longer duration of time with anaerobic training, or consistent steady state aerobic work like you're already getting in your practices. You know what I'm saying? But if you can optimize the time, instead of just trying to do the most, trying to get the best result out of the time that you're spending, now you're going to get better results, and you're also going to be able to recover. Because that's another element of conditioning that I think we often overlook, is recovery. You can be big and strong and powerful and fast and all that good stuff, but if you're never letting your body recover, then you're essentially beating it down for weeks. And then when it's at its absolute physical worst, you're saying, go perform at the best level you can. Recovery is massively important in that. My favorite analogy when it comes to talking about recovery is, think about hopping in your car on a road trip and saying, I don't care if I run out of gas, I'm just going to keep driving. You hit a certain point where you just can't. And for some reason, we live in a world where athletes are encouraged to just train 7 days a week like a savage, even though the goal is to win the fight on fight night. So a crucial part that you need to stop overlooking is recovery. So the better result you can get with your conditioning, so the more you can optimize the time that you have and that you're spending, the better recovery you're going to be able to have. And the better recovery you're going to be able to have mixed with the better results in your conditioning means the better performance in the fight. So stop thinking that there's just one answer, short sprints or long runs. Stop thinking that we're only talking about cardiovascular work. The strength training, the plyos, the recovery, all of that stuff all plays a part in the gas tank. And then focus on optimizing the time, not just putting in the most hours. It's going to take a lot of hours. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but the goal remains the same. Your goal as an athlete is not to be the guy who put in the most hours. Your goal as an athlete is to be the guy who wins the fight, or be the girl who wins the fight. And if your focus is on optimizing the hours, you're going to do that, because hard work is massively important, but the result from the hard work is the most important thing. So guys, I hope you got some value from that. I hope you learned a little something. I hope that got you thinking. If it did, I would love to know what you took away. Make sure to drop a comment on the video or on the podcast, depending on where you're listening or watching to this. Listening to or watching this. That's what I was trying to say. Make sure you follow me across all my social media platforms. Subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. And as always, my main ask of you guys is that if you got value from the show today, share it with a friend, share it with a teammate, share it with someone that's going to benefit from hearing this message. So I appreciate you all. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you on the next episode.